this week's brew with the coach's question comes from Jay Butterfield. Now, Jay is coming back to running after 2 years after a bilateral MTPJ fusion, both big toes fused. Is there any advice out there for runners with this? I'm interested to know how strong the fusions are and if I can push it when it comes to running. Although the pain from arthritis has stopped, I still get aches in my toes and I'm not sure if I should run at all. Finally, I used to enjoy yoga, but find it hard now that I cannot bend my big toes. Are there any recommended exercises to keep flexibility with this type of injury?
Hi, Jay. Thanks for this question. Essentially, to answer the question about whether or not how strong the fusions are, they are very strong. The question about whether or not you can run after this procedure, people do get back to running. It's a common procedure and it's something people can run afterwards. There's a couple of caveats on that. Obviously, it depends on the advice you were given by your surgeon at the time, whether or not they had any strong opinions about how well the fusion had taken. So that's the first thing. How strong is the fusion? How well did it take at the time? Were there any complications, any infections, anything like that? Assuming the recovery was really smooth and there was no problems, then there's no problem with you returning to running. You're not going to be able to break that fusion unless you're in sort of a major trauma situation, like you've jumped out of an aeroplane, parachute has gone wrong, that sort of thing would break it. But normal running downhill, uphill, that's not going to put stress on the metalwork to the point where it's going to break. But your running style will have changed because you now can't bend that joint of your toe. You can bend the other joint, but you can't now bend or extend that joint in the same way. So that might be why things are still a little bit achy. But I think if there's any concern, that's the first protocol, is just to make sure the surgeon was happy with the procedure. And then after that, it's sort of adapting to what you're left with in terms of the movement. I don't know if you've had podiatry intervention, but that's something that can be looked at as well. Is there anything to do with shoe fit, that sort of thing, which can just make that a little bit more comfortable? Is there a different style of shoe which just helps the fact that you can't toe off with your gait in the same way that you could before? I might hand over to our resident yoga expert for the next part of the question. But essentially, for me, that would come down to, again, postures where you don't require you to go up onto that toe. It should be possible. So anything which keeps your foot in a neutral position should be fine. But yeah, I think in summary, yes, people get back to running. We commonly see this, and people do after 6-12 months should be able to run again. It should be strong enough for you to do even off-road running, but you just need to make sure the surgeon was completely happy with your recovery and it was a standard, uncomplicated procedure.
With that toe that's infused, like when you go through the foot, where does it sort of limit the movement? Because I'm trying to imagine you can't toe off. So your foot, that knuckle joint is completely straight. You can't bend over the top of it in the same way. You've got movement at your other joint, the one below it, but you haven't got any movement at that joint. So it does. And he's had them done on both sides as well. So he's now got that on both. Which is why it may be just causing some discomfort, because that's a lot to get used to. Presumably the calf and the soleus and everything, you start going, you're going to
have to work around it.
Yeah, your body's very clever, won't it? And it will readjust that gait to sort of go around it. And so if you sort of pronate in and your tendency is to try and push off that might be why I'd suggest seeing a podiatrist to maybe get you on a treadmill, get a gait assessment, see how it's altered things, and then see if there's anything they can do just to sort of make that as smooth as possible, that toe off movement. And also perhaps some strengthening exercises, because all those tiny little, even like all the proprioception, everything is going to be different, isn't it? So on a wobble board, perhaps on a Bosu ball as well, looking at working that joint, it's going to be working slightly different. So if you haven't had, I presume from the surgery, you probably get physio then after it, but maybe a physio who's worked with runners who then want to go on to have a long life running as well. I've got arthritis in both my big toes when I had MRIs, and the doctor said, "You've got about 15 years, Eddie. Go, go, go." And so I was like, okay, I've got 15 years in my toes. I would say for the yoga, like all of us when we're doing yoga, and Trisha's starting her yoga journey only tonight, you just find what works for you. So obviously, like the downward dog is hard because you're trying to go through your toes as well, but it is the movement that you've got to do running. So I would say just find out what, and if I can't do something in yoga, I don't do it. I go back, and the things that I find really hard, like sitting cross-legged, even the child's pose, some days I find that hard. Just go and do what you can. And if you find the more you do, you'll find, okay, I know I can't do that. But a lot of yoga movements is putting the foot flat on the floor and feeling through the floor with all the toes. And that must be so important if now you've lost that toe joint, because the other toes have got to work so hard now to compensate for the fact that that big toe is basically just there as a stabilization, isn't it? It's just there as a tripod.
Yeah.
Jay, I hope that helps. Trish, Russell?
I have nothing. I have no experience with this. Sorry.
You've not got fused big toes, but it comes up in our Facebook group about people have got arthritis in their toes, and what to do and how much they can push through pain and stuff. So there will be, as us crazy trail runners, the new generation going through, I think we'll find more and more of us are like, how do we cope with this? So Jay, let us know how it goes. Let us know if any of that is useful and how you're doing. And yeah, do put something on the Facebook group, because there is people we'd like to learn and we'd like to know. And I'm sure other people that perhaps are going to go through this procedure, been through this procedure, or have arthritis in their toes, they might be able to offer useful stuff as well.